Hello, adventurer. It's good to see you. You have made it to the morning grind.
Welcome, welcome.
It's the live stream at the beginning of the Geekverse, where we talk about all types of topics in geekdom, gaming, and fantasy, with an emphasis on being constructive and creating the things that we want to exist in the world.
It's all on the grind, Sizemore. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
That's exactly right. There are a lot of adventures to be had today. Dungeons to explore and monsters to slay, and who knows what a random encounter might send our way. That's why we have to prepare, so settle in now for the morning grind with your favorite beverage in hand.
Tea? Or maybe something a little stronger. I've got a few bottles of the old Wynyard left.
Whatever you want. Pull up a chair.
Dude.
If you're feeling fancy, how about a cappuccino? Or a frappuccino? Or how about an espresso?
Just tea, thank you.
Sounds good to me, Gandalf. Whatever you want. I'm just glad you're here.
Everyone is welcome. You can just watch if you want. You don't have to worship anything you don't want to worship.
Thank you, Mike. But be forewarned.
Sometimes we get really strange characters around here.
Wait, what's that you say? Why can't you come and be a part of the stream?
My wife would disown me.
Oh no, I bet she'll be fine with it. Come on in.
Am I scared for my safety? No.
What are we supposed to do?
Everybody do the secret handshake.
Secret cultist handshake.
Oh, now do wizards who love each other.
This, my friend, is a science.
I still don't have gifts, but it's fine.
It's all on the grind, son. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
Dude, this would be a sick place to bring the band.
Indeed it would be, Dave. It really would. I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Oh, look, here's someone new.
Is this the cultist meetup?
Yes it is.
Come to hang out? Please accept me. I have nothing else.
Okay, we accept you. Everyone's welcome here.
Brought some snacks.
Well, that makes things even better.
You want some coffee? I don't drink coffee. You sure? It's cultist coffee. What makes it cultist coffee? I'm a cultist and I'm drinking it. Oh. Then I'll have some.
What exactly is going on here?
I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. It's so great to have you. Oh, and look, here comes another stranger.
Can we help you?
Yes, fellow cultists. I could really use some food.
Oh, yeah? Welcome. We have donuts.
Oh, it's me. I'm glad I'm here. I'm sure you have a few questions for me, though.
What's your name? Who do you work for? What god do you worship?
Great questions, Rob.
I'm Steve King, and I worship Nyarlathotep.
No, not really. I'm just Heath, and I won't be worshiping anything this morning. But I will be your host. Welcome to the office. We're going to have a great time. I've got my coffee ready, because now it's time for the morning grind.
If you could become a fish, that would be amazing. Then I could command you with my mental fish powers.
Hey, there we are. Hey, good morning. Oh, are we out of focus here? Maybe the camera will focus. Let's see. Or do I just look that horrible this morning? It's possible I look just that horrible this morning. Let's see. There. I think that works better. Okay. Pulled out the old manual focus. All right. Good morning. Yeah, I was out. I was up late last night. I lost track of the time last night. I was working on stuff for the Christmas story, and then I lost track of time this morning. I went to sleep, lost track of time. So hopefully you have been productive. But welcome to the office. Welcome to my house. Welcome to the morning grind. We're going to talk some more about story structure with the Screenwriter's Bible. You know, scheduling morning grind stuff is another one of those things that needs to happen as far as the administration goes. We were talking about administration yesterday, and I want to get more organized as far as that goes. But at the moment, I only do what I can do. So here we are. So good morning, everybody. I got a couple things to show you. So, good morning, Multiverse DM. Welcome, Robert. Robert says, rewrote assistant prompts from GM's perspective. Rewrote assistant prompt from GM's perspective, instructing it to use game console and NPC and monsters have come to life, each with unique motivations. Wow. I'm really interested to see what the beta like this is going to be. Able to handle more than 10 different characters. That sounds really cool. Robert's working on a AI-driven text-based adventure game. Robert says the game can finally see the field of play and the characters take autonomous actions. Promising breakthrough. Wow. Zero the Blade says, as a Russian Grandy once said, morning someplace in the world. Let's drink. Here, let's do it. I got coffee this morning. YouTube's new anti-ad blocker pop-up is BS. I don't know. I have not heard. I do have the YouTube Premium. Was it like the $7 whatever? And it's worth it. I'll tell you something about the YouTube ad. I mean, from the perspective of the creators, that's another thing that takes admin time. If you're going to monetize through ads, like for a live stream, like this kind of live stream, what I would have to do is I would have to go in and I would have to manually tell it where I want the ad placement to be. If I want to be able to monetize the replay on this. And one of the reasons that it really doesn't get done is because you have to go in and manually do it. There is a button. It seems like you would want to be able to say, hey, once this is processed, please put in the ad breaks. And that's fine to let it monetize. But if you but it doesn't, you still even have to go and click a button. Even if you want YouTube to choose where to put the ads, YouTube, you still have to go in and click and specifically tell it, hey, I want this video monetized. YouTube, go and tell it where you just go and choose where you want the ads, because theoretically, or it says, let YouTube choose where to put the ads so that it's least disruptive to the video while also not being disruptive to the viewing experience and also maximizing the revenue of your channel. Well, on that surface, that sounds pretty good. Like, oh, well, yeah, that's exactly what I'd like. The ads be placed in a good place that's not too disruptive. I don't want to disrupt the viewing schedule too much, the viewing experience. And I also don't want to, but I also like to know where the ad should go to maximize some type of revenue if you're trying to monetize through ads. Except for if you click that button, YouTube puts an ad in the video like every 90 seconds to 2 minutes. I mean, it's constant. And I'm like, how in the world is this not disrupting the viewing experience? So you can't use that button. Now, maybe they've changed some things, but I bet they haven't. Because it used to be, if you click that button, they make your video completely unwatchable. They just stuffed full of ads. And so I have to go in, if I'm going to put an ad in, and do it manually to keep there from being a million ads in a video. It's probably not, if you see a video that's absolutely stuffed full, it's probably not the creator. It could be, but far, far more likely they've just tried to let YouTube handle where to put those things, and then YouTube has just stuffed it full. It's terrible. I can back the pop-up. So now so a lot of people, I see the Brave browser was being used. I was using Brave to browse specifically YouTube. Then they told me I was able to view 3 whole videos that way. Brave blocks all ads innately before they deactivated my account. Oh, YouTube? Robert says game uses JavaScript to create characters, exits, objects, XP, HP, and has inventory. Oh, by the way, James. So I saw that I've got the edits in the inbox. Thank you. I'll write you back on that. But I saw they were in the inbox this morning. So I'm working on a cover over here. I'll show you here in just a second. So I also have something to put up on Kickstarter. And then what will happen is then I'm going to make up my draft 3 or version 3 of the story. with your edits and what I got back from Brianna. Just going through. Hey, Stray. Good morning, Stray. Good morning, Vision. Good morning. And BGD. Good morning. Good morning. Let's see. Stray gifted a membership. Thank you so much, Stray. I wonder who got it. So one membership has been gifted. Thank you, Stray. George. George Leacona was gifted a membership by Stray. Hey, George, here's to you. Say hi in the chat, George. Good morning. All right. Let's see. Thank you, Stray. Oh, well, thank you. I'm not sure what that was specifically referencing. Maybe not putting like something full of ads. But yeah, that's the reason people use ad blockers. If it were something, if it were something reasonable an amount, then that would be one thing. But man, yes, thank you. The Discord link right there. I got my Discord running again, so there's no other stuff that's been going on there. I need to check out. So I got it running yesterday. All right. Let's see. Let me take that down. So, what was I about to say? I don't remember. So this is what I was working on. This is the concept. I mean, this is not final, but I was trying to hack together a concept for the way the cover needs to go, and also something that will be catchy for on Kickstarter and things like this. So this is I think this is generally, and of course, what it's going to look like with the title up at the top, of course. So this got space up there at the up above there for the title, and then I'll put written by down here at the bottom. It probably needs to slide up a little bit. The Holy Family down here, so that I can put the the byline. But I think that's basically what the cover and the main images are going to be like. So now I've still got to work with that, but that's basically the mock-up of the idea. So I got to that point. James says, "Good composition. Are you hiring an illustrator or going AI?" I don't know. I think I'm going to have time. I don't know if I have time to go to hire an illustrator. I don't think I'm going to have time to illustrate a whole book either this Christmas. So it might be that this book just has to get out in text form this Christmas, and then next year do an entire do an entire illustrated version. Maybe I can find an illustrator to work on it next year. So I've got, so that's the next step, is to take this and to see if I can run this through some different generators to get it to actually unify this as a single kind of composition. So that's what's going on there. Multiverse says, "I heard YouTube creators with 500K subs allow ads when they watch videos. Ads when they watch videos from that channel. It's like a give deal with YouTube. They won't pay channels that also ad block. They have the data." Oh, I think I see what you're saying here. I have not heard that. That if you want your channel monetized, you can't use ad blocker. Vision says, "If I get an ad that interrupts my video, I hate whatever product is being advertised." Stray says that came out nice. So okay, I got to that point last night, because I was like, oh, I was writing things up, and it's time to like get an image for Kickstarter and stuff like that, because I need that link. It's time to get all that going. It was exciting to get it up. Oh, Sable says I can do illustration. Oh, really? Art Institute and all that? I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's cool. All right. Let's see here. Let's bring up the War of Art. There we go. Let's bring that up, and then let's have our sip right here. I got my coffee ready. 2 deep inhales, complete exhales, then take our sip. Here we go. And sip. That's good. That's good this morning. I'm still trying to wake up here. Stray says Sable is like a Swiss Army awesome. All right, let's go over here and read The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. We're talking about resistance here. Resistance is everything that keeps you from being everything you need to be or want to be. And specifically, it keeps you from what prevents you from achieving your creative goals and creating the things that you want. So rationalization, this is resistance and rationalization. Rationalization is the resistance's right-hand man. Its job is to keep us from the feeling its job is to keep us from feeling the shame we would feel if we truly faced what cowards we were for not doing our work. Michael, don't knock rationalizations. Where would we be without it? I don't know anyone who can get through the day without 2 or 3 juicy rationalizations. They're more important than sex. Sam, oh, come on. Nothing's more important than sex. Michael says, oh, yeah? Have you ever gone a week without a rationalization? Jeff Goldblum and Tom Berenger in Lawrence Kasdan's The Big Chill. But a rationalization has its own sidekick. It's that part of our psyche that actually believes what the rationalization tells us. It's one thing to lie to ourselves. It's another thing to believe it. Resistance and rationalization, part 2. Resistance is fear, but resistance is too cunning to show itself naked in this form. Why? Because if resistance leads us to see clearly, if resistance lets us see clearly that our own fear is preventing us from doing our work, we may feel shame at this, and shame may drive us to act in the face of fear. Resistance doesn't want us to do this, so it brings in the rationalization. Rationalization is resistance's spin doctor. It's resistance's way of hiding the big stick behind its back. Instead of showing us our fear, which might shame us and impel us to do our work, resistance prevents us with a series of plausible, rational justifications for why we shouldn't do our work. Man, this hits hard, doesn't it? What's particularly insidious about the rationalizations that resistance presents us is that a lot of them are true. They're legitimate. Our wife may really be in her 8th month of pregnancy. She may in truth need us to be home. Our department may really be instituting a changeover that will eat up hours of our time. Indeed, it may make sense to put off finishing our dissertation, at least until after the baby's born. What resistance leaves out, of course, is that this means diddly. Tolstoy had 13 kids and wrote War and Peace. Lance Armstrong had cancer and won the Tour de France 3 years and counting. Resistance can be beaten. If resistance couldn't be beaten, there would be no Fifth Symphony and no Romeo and Juliet, no Golden Gate Bridge. Defeating resistance is like giving birth. It seems absolutely impossible until you remember that women have been pulling it off successfully with support and without for 50 million years. So we got to do our work. Sable, I went to an art institute for computer animation, but I was drawing since I could hold a pencil. Oh. This book doesn't pull punches. No, it does not. All right. Let's go over and take a look at, we're looking at the Screenwriter's Bible. This has been fun. Oh, and hey, you know, I found all my highlighters. I knew I had other highlighters, but it's the Amazon Basics, so I didn't recognize the box. But yes, I found them. So I got all kinds of highlighters of all kinds of colors. ready to go this morning, looking at the Screenwriter's Bible, kind of in preparation for having to go through NaNoWriMo. This is already, was this the 13th? Yeah, this is the 13th already. So we got to get ready for those of us who are going to be writing for NaNoWriMo. And I have got to call the car service because I still don't have a car. I got to do that this afternoon, or as soon as I get off this live stream. Really, I got to sign some tax documents and then call about my truck. Then get back to work. Oh, it is Friday the 13th. It is Friday the 13th. It would be a good night for scary movies. James says, this part in particular came off not as resistance, but an inability to properly prioritize. You can still do your work and take care of what's needed. Yeah. And last time, what like generally things that needed to be done were not being taken care of when I was writing the Christmas story. And like this car service thing, I got to make this phone call, but what's wrong with my car? They might not have even looked at it yet. And this was a fast place the last time I had car trouble. All right, so where are we on the Screenwriter's Bible? Up and away with my beautiful balloons. In terms of setting up story or situation, it will be hard to find a better example than the opening scene of Up. The marriage montage in particular. That's one I haven't seen as well. I haven't seen Up. But I still maintain that How to Train Your Dragon has an ultimate opening scene. How to Train Your Dragon does fantastic. Well, I know. I was just talking about that because it is about it hits hard because we all do it. James says that wasn't targeted at you, Heath. You always seem to be able to make time for taxes or car trouble remediation, etc. Well, not as well as I would like. What I don't make time for is house cleaning. And he does end up addressing this. I was listening when I listened to this earlier. I've got it on audiobook as well. He was talking about you want the muse to be able to come into the house without soiling her skirt or something like that. And that is not the case at the house right now. There's still going to have to be a major cleaning that goes on. It would be great if that could happen before NaNoWriMo, but I got to get the Christmas story launched on Kickstarter and the relaunch of Goodnight Sword on Indiegogo done. Then the Christmas story, then the Rabavania book edited, and then it's time to write the script for Rabavania. Actually, okay, in the screenplay, in terms of setting up story or situation, it'll be hard to find a better example than the opening sequence of Up, the marriage montage in particular. Actually, in the screenplay, it's a series of short scenes presented in the film as a montage. As children, both Carl and Ellie are inspired by Professor Charles Muntz, who later with his dogs becomes an opposition character. However, it's Muntz's adventure out there attitude that brings the kids together. As they become acquainted, we see the following visual moments, among others. Ellie's house, the house that will become their house, and a symbol of Ellie. The grape soda pen, you're in the club now. Ellie sends a balloon trailing a note through Carl's window. I have not watched Up. Carl crosses his heart. Ellie's My Adventure book includes additional blank pages she is saving. Next is the marriage montage. It contains no dialogue, many small touching moments, and the following visual elements. Handprints on the mailbox. Carl sells balloons that lift off his balloon cart and will later lift his house. Ellie can't have kids, so Carl shows her My Adventure book. Carl crosses his heart. He takes on an adventure. They save their money in a jar labeled Paradise Falls. Later, Carl looks at his photo of Ellie as a child. He wants to take her to Paradise Falls, but now she's dying. Carl sends a balloon trailing a note through Ellie's window. Ellie gives him my adventure book as a farewell. Not only is the audience hooked, but the story is set up. Most everything that follows is derived from the above. Ellie and the house that symbolizes her becomes the motivating force of what Carl does thereafter. We see all the above visual elements repeated later in the movie, including the grape soda pen. Each payoff is touching, dramatic, funny, or some combination thereof. The above opening sequence is a wonderful example of foreshadowing, but it also additionally illustrates the importance of establishing emotional, motivational, and visual elements early. The screenplay as a whole is a lesson in economy. Writers use objects and characters, in this case months more than once, which lends the story a sense of unity. This is screenwriting that's best. Okay, well, I got to watch Up then. Let me make some notes. Hey, good morning, PH. Where's my personal watch list? I'm sure YouTube you can find the opening 10 minutes of Up. Okay, Up is on my personal list now. Good morning. The Dynamite experience. My introduction to Napoleon Dynamite came at my urging of my 17-year-old nephew, Taylor. Uncle Dave, it's great. It's totally unique, and it doesn't have a plot. I watched it and loved it, especially the classroom happy hand scene, but I had bad news for my nephew. I said, I hate to tell you this, but the writers use classic romantic comedy structure for their story. He looked shocked. Let me take you through the main turning points, I said. A drama begins with things more or less in balance, and then the catalyst upsets the balance and gets the story moving. The catalyst is when Deb meets Napoleon on his doorstep and when she tries to sell him beauty aids. But Dynamite is a comedy, not a drama, Taylor said. I explained that comedy has its roots in drama and then continued with the lecture. The big event is when Deb sits down next to him in the cafeteria. This is a big event if girls don't usually like you. James says, efficiency, it's efficiency. Efficiency is king. That's the whole heart of the phrase, show, don't tell. Even though my nephew didn't have girl problems, he understood. Having read previous editions of the Screenwriter's Bible, encouraged, I blathered on. The midpoint is usually the moment toward the middle of the movie when the characters become more committed, involved, and motivated. In Napoleon Dynamite, it's the dance. And who does Napoleon end up with at the dance? Deb, Taylor says knowingly, and then put the rest together. The crisis is when the two are pulled apart by a misunderstanding. She calls Napoleon a shallow friend. But the big guy bounces back, I interrupted. He dances at the election assembly, demonstrating his skill. Remember what he said earlier about girls liking boys with skills such as nunchuck skills? My nephew laughed, recalling the moment, and then resolved the story for me. So Deb returns to the tetherball court where Napoleon delivers his immortal romantic line. I caught you a delicious bass, he says. Want to play me? So she plays him. That combined with his earlier dazzling footwork, it's the showdown or the climax. A dynamite experience, I quipped. But that's not the whole story. Napoleon has not one but two goals that drive this movie. Remember, he's trying to help Pedro win the election for student body president. In fact, it's the only reason Napoleon dances at the end, to win the election for Pedro. Thus, his dancing is not only the showdown for the Get Pedro Elected action plot, but also sets up his climactic meeting with Deb at the tetherball court, resolution of the relationship plot. That's when Napoleon realizes he's got himself a babe. I call that the realization. Hey, don't forget the other romantic subplot of Kip and LaFonda, Taylor added proudly, emphasizing the final syllable, duh. He scratched his head, thinking, I guess the flick seemed plotless because the structure was handled in a fresh and original way. Exactly, I said, and I put his hand on his shoulder. Hungry, I asked. He was. I know a place that serves delicious bass. I've never seen it either, actually. This is 2 movies in a row here that I have not seen. So let me put this one over here. So, well, sometime I guess I'm just going to have to sit around and watch movies again. When do you have time to just sit around and watch movies? You'll notice I mentioned several different plot points in the above true life adventures with my nephew. Let's explore the major plot points or turning points below. The Magnificent Seven. In addition to the Catalyst, which I also have not seen. I thought I was doing better watching a whole bunch of movies. But when you're watching these when you're reading these books, all these movies come up. Multiverse says, one of the interesting things about writers of this content, they won't review any peer content on the same topic. DJ Your Story nukes that concept. Watching movies and reading is essential to writing. Yeah, well, yeah, at some point, maybe that's a last break right before the script writing starts. Maybe there should be like 2 days of going through. Well, of course, there's reading to be done because there's a whole stack of stuff that everybody's associated with this channel writes that I've got to read. But then also maybe go through a few critical movies that this story talks about in advance of that. Sable says, if there's a film show that's popular, it can't be plotless. That's an art piece. Even the show about nothing, Seinfeld, is definitely not about nothing. Right. Yeah, that would have been weird if it were like, hey, this one doesn't actually have a plot. I bet it does. But it's interesting that it wasn't immediately identified. Yeah, it's not wasted time. It's research and enrichment. It is. That's not. Yeah, you've got to do your research and study. That's not resistance. That's training. I mean, I guess it could be. It could be a form of resistance. The famous episode where George is pitching his show about nothing sounds at first like he's describing Seinfeld in a fourth wall breaking manner, but then they have to introduce conflict. The network loves the idea, but then they start giving it a plot. Yes. In addition to the catalyst, big event, and crisis, there are 4 major turning points that you'll want to apply, making 7 major plot points in all. I call these the Magnificent 7 plot points. Okay, so we're not this the Magnificent 7 plot points. They are the backstory, the catalyst, the big event, the midpoint, sometimes called the pinch, the crisis, the showdown, also called the climax, and the realization. All right, so we got the Magnificent 7 plot points. They are the backstory, the catalyst, the big event, the midpoint, sometimes called the pinch, the crisis, the showdown, and the realization. The backstory. The backstory is an event that generally occurs before the movie begins. It's usually some definitive past trauma, such as Elsa being orphaned in the shape of water, that affects the character's attitude and behavior throughout the movie. On occasion, writers present the backstory as the first scene and then cut to years later. So I think we've been calling this, I've often been calling this the prologue, because that's a great way to get action. It's a great way to start on action, even if the story itself doesn't start on action. How can you get a great climactic battle at Mount Doom at the start of The Lord of the Rings? Well, you do that by doing that in the prologue. So that's a great point. So this is, that was the first scene, a climactic battle at Mount Doom. And then we can start this. Is Magnificent 7. I think it's a retelling. Isn't it a retelling of that? Yeah, it's got to be. I call them the 7 samurai plot points. That would be better. the 7 samurai plot points. I would recommend, right. So, okay. So the Magnificent 7 and then the 7 samurai. Watch them both. Yeah. The Magnificent 7 is basically taking the 7 samurai and putting it into the American Western and then trimming out 2 hours of runtime. Oh, Okay. So other times it's revealed through flashback. Most often it emerges through dialogue. In some movies, there's no apparent backstory, as in Hitchcock's Psycho. Sometimes the backstory is shown as the first scene in a movie and is generally followed by a jump in time to the present day story, such as in Vertigo and The Sixth Sense. On rare occasions, it involves the historical past, such as in Argo. The beginning, Act 1 of a screenplay, ends with a big event. The beginning of a screenplay ends with the big event. The middle focuses primarily on the conflict and complications. The center character emerges from Act 1 with a desire to do something about the difficult situation created by the big event. Her action will likely fail, forcing her to take new actions. There will be many setbacks in Act 2, as well as some breakthrough or temporary triumph. Beginning of Act 1 of a screenplay ends with the big event. A long middle section, Act 2 of a 3-act structure, usually focuses on rising conflict, rising action. Your reader will lose interest in a conflict that's merely repetitive. For example, when the central character and opposition character fight, and then fight again, and then fight again, and so on. Well, that sounds like Ahsoka. Hey, let's have a whole bunch of lightsaber battles. That'll be cool. No, but we actually lose interest when the central character and opposition character fight, and then fight again, and then fight again, and nothing happens, and there's no consequences of that fight. That happens over and over and over again. Lightsaber battles are not interesting in and of themselves. Strong subplots that crisscross with the main plot will help you avoid repetitive conflict because they will create more complications that ratchet up the main conflict. Thus, the conflict builds or intensifies. So look, that's a purpose. That's a purpose for the subplots. Strong subplots that crisscross with the main plot will help you avoid repetitive conflict because it will create more complications that ratchet up the main conflict. The midpoint or the pinch of the story is about halfway through. Another major event occurs. The central character often becomes fully committed. I sometimes think of it as the point of no return. Gone with the Wind's midpoint is when Scarlett O'Hara makes up her famous vow before intermission. I'll never go hungry again. Yes, this is when the central character becomes fully committed. Often this is associated with death and rebirth. Heroes in the hero's journey, often associated with death and rebirth. In the hero's journey, HJ. The midpoint can also be the moment when the motivation to achieve the goal becomes fully clear or the stakes are raised. In Ghost, this is when Sam, as a ghost, learns that his best friend is the one who killed him. The midpoint of the Green Book marks the returning point in the relationship between Dr. Shirley and Tony, and it's all due to a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Dr. Shirley indeed discovers that it's finger-licking good. In Dave, the midpoint is when Dave turns to the chief of staff and acts as president. This is truly a point of no return for Dave, as the point he becomes fully committed. There's no turning back now. In Titanic, the midpoint comes when Rose decides to jilt her fiancé and go with Jack. Once she makes this decision to leave her social world, there's no turning back. She's reached the point of no return. Shortly after her decision, the ship strikes an iceberg. From the midpoint on, the central character takes stronger actions, perhaps even desperate actions, to threaten or compromise her values. One or more temporary triumphs by the central character arouses the opposition, who now shows his true strength. There may be a major setback followed by a new revelation or inspiration. James says, yes, the feelings we've literally already done this if it's wasting their time. Let's see, what do you? I wonder if separating vocals from the show, like DJ software, and recutting it to have faster pace would be a good YouTube niche and improve old bad shows and movies. I don't know. Sable says, if a sex scene does nothing to start or advance a conflict, it's just porn. If a fight does nothing to start or advance a conflict, well, you know. Zero the Blade, that would explain why every time I hear Doug say Heroin's Labyrinth, I believe he is using the Gridman formula and calling it his own. Oh, I don't know that. From the midpoint on, the character takes stronger actions, perhaps even desperate actions that compromise her values. I like that. And then the opposition rallies. This is when Charlie Babbitt in Rainman discovers that his brother Raymond is the Rain Man of his childhood and that his dad protected Charlie as a baby by putting the Rain Man, Raymond, in an institution. The revelation forces a crucial decision. If you like to think of your story as having 4 acts of about equal length, then the midpoint is what divides the middle into 2 acts. And like I said, Brianna and I do think about that quite a bit. We still call it the 3-act structure, but we call it Act 2, Part 1, and Act 2, Part 2. The crisis. As the story's conflict intensifies, its pace quickens until the worst thing that could happen happens, or the central character faces a crucial decision, or both. Often the crisis forces a key decision. Even though there may be many crises in the story, this is the big one that leads to the showdown or climax. It's the point where all seems lost, as in Avatar when the lovers are separated in Pretty Woman. It's when Benjamin Franklin Gates is abandoned underground by Ian in National Treasure. So, as the story's conflict intensifies, we got pace quickening, central faces, crucial decision, or both. In Hidden Figures, the crisis comes when Catherine is reassigned and taken off the job just as NASA is about to launch John Glenn into orbit. For Indiana Jones, on the other hand, the worst thing that could happen is to be locked in a tomb with thousands of snakes when his enemies get away with the world's most important artifact. What's the worst thing that could happen to your character? And then do that to them. Note the rising action in the second half of Gran Torino. After spending his birthday with his Hmong neighbors, Walt, Clint Eastwood, puts Tao, the boy who tried to steal his car, to work in his yard. Tao has gang problems, so Walt gets Tao to a job. Smokey and the gang destroy Tao's tools and burn his neck with a cigarette. Walt reacts by beating Smokey and telling him to lay off Tao. The gang then rapes Sue and shoots up Tao's house. That's the crisis. It motivates Walt to make the crisis decision that leads to the showdown. The showdown. Right, yeah. It is. Yeah, Act 2, Part 1 is everything before the midpoint. Act 2, Part 2 is everything after it. Not an uncommon way to view it. It's helped us out a lot. Because otherwise, Act 1 is to conceptualize it that way. Since Act 2 can be so long, and it's got to have the structure. So as you know, the climax or showdown follows the heel on the heels of the crisis. After someone or something or some new inspiration spurs the character to get to the showdown. For instance, in Hidden Figures, it's when John Glenn asks for Catherine's mathematical expertise, getting her back on the job. At the showdown, the goal is on the line. The goal is on the line, including the theme or movie message discussed later. And in some important value, the more your character must suffer or struggle, the stronger the resolution will play. In Independence Day, the crisis is very dark, but a new revelation inspired by David's cold, caused by a virus, provides a glimmer of hope that our heroes to make the crisis decision, to take one last gamble, flying into the mothership and trying to inject a computer virus into the ship's system. Basic American values and global unity are at stake. The same is true in Gravity. The crisis point is when Stone, Sandra Bullock, turns off her oxygen so that she can die. She sees Kowalski, who scolds her for giving up. When she realizes that Kowalski's appearance is not real, she vows to fight on. There's something to show There's something to show you about the movie's end. There's something you should know about the movie's end. It's not mandatory to have car chases and explosions in it. In Moonstruck, everyone simply gathers around the breakfast table. It's the big scene at the end, the big scene at the movie. It's the point where everything comes together. It's the showdown, which is even bigger than the big event. Although Hollywood loves a happy ending, some of the most effective and affecting stories have bittersweet ends and some sadness. Castaway, My Best Friend's Wedding, Up in the Air, Philadelphia, Gone with the Wind, The Social Network, Glass, Sling Blade, and Casablanca. Avoid the Dux Ex Machina ending, literally the god from the machine. In ancient Greece, at the end of the play, the gods would enter in some sort of contraption that solved the mortal's problem. Easy solutions are not dramatic. Let your characters rescue themselves at the end, even though there may be others to assist them. In fact, the central character should be the most active character in the final act. Yes, and so sometimes when people, even if you're not actually bringing in the gods here, you're not having that, you've got somebody else do something. That's the, hey, this is a sequence of events. And so if this is a history, if it's a sequence of events, then, hey, maybe somebody else stepped in and solved the major problem at the end rather than our main character. But that doesn't work for stories because the central character should be the most active one in the final act and the one that actually brings about the change. Sable says, I loved how Eastwood is playing against type, though. Good morning, Andrew. Good morning. He leans into his own stereotype and then turns that on his head. That is how you subvert expectations, Ryan Johnson. Literally everything happens in Act 2. There's a lot to deal with while writing. I'm gonna have to look up. In fact, let me just do that right now. Eric Edson. You brought him up before. Eric Edson. Here's his LinkedIn profile. Professor, screenwriter, emeritus director of graduate screenwriting at Cal State Northridge, author of The Story Solution. The Story Solution, 23 actions all great heroes must take. Well, that sounds interesting. Looking it up on Amazon. Eric Edison, The Story Solution. I'm going to drop that into a shopping cart. I'll check it out. He's on Film Courage. Oh, okay. Probably watch him on Film Courage and then see if I want to get the book. An apparent exception to that rule is apparent in the movie Captain Phillips. In the end, Captain Phillips does not save himself, but is rescued by secondary characters, the SEALs. How does the writer compensate for this structural weakness? Okay, so it is a structural weakness. Okay, this is good. First, this is apparently a true story, and one of the reasons we accept the ending. Okay, so that can be respect to some type of source material. Right. And I was dealing with that in The Christmas Story because I was trying to write it, but I also am trying to write the story, but I also want to respect the source material, which is the biblical story of the birth of Christ. Oh, there's a 2-hour interview about the 23 actions on Film Courage, as DM points out. Okay, cool. Okay, so first, it's a true story, and that's one reason we accept the ending. Secondly, the pirates, the teen pirate in particular, elicit some sympathy that interest as desperately poor pawns of the warlord. Secondly, the pirates, the teen pirate in particular, elicit some sympathy or interest as desperately poor pawns of a warlord. Third, the resolution is not easy, but dramatic with plenty of conflict. The most important reason for the ending works is the high level of emotional involvement we have with the captain, including the story's denouement of his being treated for shock. Okay. I don't know that one. I do not know that one, but it might be worth watching to understand if you've got this structural issue here. How do you compensate? Because often that seems to be the case. We've seen that in a couple of other situations that, well, okay, you can do anything, like James was saying, you can do anything if it works. But how do you make it work? Like if you've got a situation where you've got to do something that's bizarre structurally, you decide to do a bizarre structural thing, you're going to have to compensate and do something else that's going to make it work. So how do you do that? It's not like the captain is inactive in the third act. He isn't. One of my favorite moments is the captain's desperate search for pen and paper. At first, we don't know what he's up to. Plus, we worry that he might get caught. So suspense is created in two ways. We finally realize he simply wants to write one last note to his family. He thinks he's going to die. A lesser writer might have handled this with an overwrought line of dialogue. I'm going to die here, and I want to tell my wife that I love her. You can see in this instance how much better it is to show than tell. Maybe it's another reason to watch that movie. I have no information about that movie at all. I further suggest you don't end your screenplay by essentially saying it didn't really happen. That type of ending seldom works dramatically. Bring closure to the story's end. Don't leave endings open or ambiguous. I realize there are exceptions to these guidelines. After all, the events in the magical land of Oz were part of a dream, and the animals in the life of Pi were just representations of people. And I love those movies. And apparently most everything in The Usual Suspects, except the heist itself, was made up or colored by verbal interrogation. Does the unclear conclusion in Hitchcock's The Birds work for you? How about the ambiguous ending of All is Lost? Does it frustrate you or lead you to some kind of statement or theme about life and death? In these cases, I suggest you don't take these types of artistic risks in your first script. But of course, that's totally up to you. In the words of Lauren Garza, an entertainment advertising designer who's worked on over 800 film campaigns, ambiguous endings make for ambiguous box office receipts. So Captain Phillips movie? Oh, it's a Tom Hanks movie? 2013 with Tom Hanks. 2013 American biographical action thriller based on the 2009 Marsick, Alabama hijacking. The film tells the story of the eponymous Captain Richard Phillips, an American merchant mariner who was taken hostage by Somali pirates. It stars Tom Hanks as Phillips alongside Barkhad Abdi as the pirate leader Abduwali Muse. The screenplay by Billy Ray is based on Phillips' 2010 book, A Captain's Duty, Somali Pirates, Navy SEALs, and Dangerous Days at Sea. The film emerged as a critical and commercial success, receiving positive reviews from critics and grossing $220 million against a budget of $55 million. It received 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Supporting Actor. Ha! Okay, well... Yeah. It was all in their head as a story cliche and it's been beaten to death. That's why you should avoid it. Well, and it also it means there wasn't any stakes. It erases the stakes. Things to be part of a dream. Wait, where does that say? Yeah, it erases the stakes from your story. I actually thought that and even in the beginning, I don't even like it to begin that way. I don't like when you're doing your major action in the beginning, like we talked about over here, the backstory, the prologue, whatever. You start on action, so you start on some type of action and then realize it didn't happen. Sometimes that can work. Sometimes you can start a story that way. Sometimes, but it still often doesn't work. I thought I was in a situation where starting that way made sense. So that was actually with an initial, with one of the thrown out versions of the Rabavania script. It did start with basically a character's daydream for the first 2 pages. So you've got high action and all of that, but it's a character's daydream. And then you get them to their ordinary, boring life. So it allows you to start on action, shows you the kind of person that he wants to be, action contrasting with his ordinary life. And I think that I was like, well, that's not how I would prefer to do it, because then once you go through this cool action sequence for 2 minutes, you realize that it doesn't actually contribute to anything because it's not actually happening. You do learn things about the character's, desire, but nothing really happened. It's better if you have the scene that actually happens and it makes an impact on the story. So that got scrapped because I realized I can better use this time. It seemed like a reasonable way to start, but I realized I can better use this time if I'm going to have this incredible action scene that starts the movie. I want it to actually matter. That part of the story needs to matter. So Sable says, "Oh wait, that's another Tom Hanks film based on recent true events, right? I did hear about it when it came out. Come to think of it, I just never thought of it since." Yeah, Sully was the other one. Yeah, exactly. No stakes, and it was essentially a grand lie told to the audience, wasting their time. You can do an all-in-their-head story if you make it personal. The Batman, the animated series episode, Perchance to Dream, or the Justice League's episode for the man who has everything to do it. Because they made the whole situation have stakes because they are targeted to make them devastating emotional blows to the protagonist. James says it can be done for sure. Identity is a whole film that does that, and excellently, but there's a real world impact at the end of the film. It isn't a waste of audience time. So those are outstanding episodes, although the man who has lost everything cheats a bit with the dream sequence being obviously a dream sequence as other heroes try to break Superman out of it. Huh. I don't know any of those. The realization. Where are we? What time have we got here? I'm going to go. I'll go a little bit longer here with the realization to conclude this. Then I got to get back. I got to get back to work. I got to see about my car. I got to sign some tax documents, and then I got to get back to work. The realization during or just after the screenplay's climactic scene or sequence of events, the central character realizes something new about themselves, or we're shown some visible or spoken evidence of growth. The central character has emerged from a crucible, has shown great courage, physical, emotional, and or moral, and is now the final result. And now the final result must be revealed to the audience and understood by the central characters. This is the moment of realization. In Ghosts, Sam's growth is demonstrated at the end when he's finally able to say, "I love you" to Molly instead of "ditto." Sam grows in another way, from mortal to guardian angel to heavenly being, beginning, middle, end. Cleo, the maid in the movie Roma, gives birth to a dead baby, but after risking life rescuing 2 of her employer's children at the beach, she admits she didn't want the baby, and the family puts her in to express their love to her. Her family pulls in to express love to her. Though it's not stated, the audience is sure that he realizes she has value as a contributor to the family. Even so, life as a maid for Cleo continues as it always has. In A Christmas Carol, Scrooge needs the Christmas spirit. His attitude toward Christmas is neatly summed up in 2 words of dialogue. Bah, humbug. The story is about transforming his attitude. In the end, the change in Scrooge is revealed through charitable actions and words. After the showdown in Birmingham, Alabama, Dr. Shirley makes sure that Tony gets home. This is how the Green Book ends. Well, not really. Afterwards, Dr. Shirley finds himself at home. So he returns to the Valonia residence, and they invite him in to join them at the table. He realizes, and the audience realizes, that he is accepted by Tony and his family. In City Slickers, after Mitch Robbins battles the river, he declares, "I know the meaning of life. It's my family." Jerry Maguire brings many action elements together in the realization. At Rod's interview after the game on the television later, he expresses gratitude to Jerry. It's then that Jerry realizes he has achieved his mission statement about integrity and providing personal attention. This realization is never directly stated, but the audience recognizes it when Rod thanks Jerry in the interviews. The audience also realizes that Jerry has succeeded in his outside goal when the terms of Rod's new contract are announced in the interview. Finally, during all of this, Troy Aikman, quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, mentions Jerry that he likes his memo, referring to the mission statement. Is Troy going to let Jerry represent him? Looks like it to me. I've never seen Jerry Maguire. Well, no, actually, if I've seen it, man, it's been a long time. The animated series is a great show. I recommend it for sure. Andrew says, such a great comic. I know people overhype him, but I really like the Alan Moore comics. Trying his prose, but some of it gets over my head. Alan Moore can write good superhero stuff when he's not being cynical. I loved TSA and was going to submit a spec script, but was too late. I should have anyway, because I don't know they were going on and on to make other cartoons. So we have identified another writer here in Andrew. Like I said, it's amazing that the common interest that we've all ended up with here on the show. If they're going to die, they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. Yeah, that's Scrooge. Andrew says, I also love his interviews because I like that accent. He seems like a fun guy to hang out for a limited amount of time. Those bending reality cats can be a bit much. No, Lord, right. The conversations, the shows that I think are the best are the ones that are actually conversations. In Mr. Holland's opus, Mr. Holland, Richard Dreyfuss, is rewarded for his years of dedication to teaching when all of his students return and play his composition for him. He realizes that he has touched all of the students. In Groundhog Day, Phil Connors goes through 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, the crisis, and acceptance, and then is presented to us at the town dance and bachelor auction. The town likes him, Rita likes him, and at long last, he likes himself. In the beginning of Falling Down, we identify with William Foster, but we soon lose affection for him as he declines. Detective Martin Penderglass, however, grows, so our affections shift to him. In the end, these two characters square off, realizing what they become. Pendergrass has become the good cop, and a man, Foster, has different realizations. He says, "You mean I'm the bad guy?" Sometimes the realization can be thought of as a resurrection of the hero. Oscar Schindler is presented with a ring at the end of Schindler's List. He realizes how much good he's done, though he regrets not doing more, and that maybe he is a good man after all. He has grown from sinner to saint. The realization of growth can be negative. At the end of The Godfather, Michael is able to lie to his wife, and then a patron kisses his ring. We realize that he's truly the Godfather. The overall realization for you as a writer is this: all of these examples provide an emotional payoff to the reader of your script and to your audience. So all of this provides an emotional payoff to your audience. Finally, we have the denouement, which is not a plot point, but is the final brief section after the showdown, where all the loose ends are tied together. Any remaining subplots are resolved. Usually the realization is part of the denouement. In Back to the Future, we see how Marty's family turns out, and the professor returns from the future with a stunning new outfit. Oh, and Marty's future kids are a mess, the setup for a sequel. In summary, the 7 magnificent plot points are: the backstory usually happens before the story begins. It motivates or haunts the central character, usually giving a rise to a flaw. The catalyst kicks things off. It's part of your story's setup. The big event changes your character's life. We move to Act 2, the middle. The midpoint is a major moment in your story's middle. It's often the point of no return to a moment of deep motivation for your central character. The crisis is the low point, or a moment that forces a decision that leads to your story's end. We move to Act 3, the end. The showdown or climax is the final face-off between your central character and the opposition. The realization occurs when your character and the audience sees that the character has changed. The realization is usually part of the denouement. Note, for summary review of the functions of each of these turning points, see Step 3, develop your core story in Book 3. All right. Then we go into ideas about formulaic writing. Design powerful endings. All right. So, right there. Useful stuff, I think. Have you ever noticed that our caps actually have little pictures of skulls on them? Hans, are we the baddies? Oh, no. Andrew says, I quit writing decades ago. The world didn't need another writer with nothing to say. You quote that line from around the house all the time. All right. Well, all right. So I've got to sign tax documents. I've got to call the car. I got to call the car place, see about my car. I haven't been, well, no, with one exception. I went to that, my cousin picked me up so I could go to the art show and hang out with family the other day. But otherwise, I have not been more than 3/4 of a mile from my house in like a month or something like that. I don't know. And so I need this car back. All right. So everybody go be productive, be creative, be productive, be constructive, and grind on. Please do hit the like button. I will see everybody later.